Welcome to Village of Bartlett. Oh, it's not Mr. Williams. It's from Williams. Welcome to the Village of Bartlett Committee of the Whole meeting for July 5th, 2016. I call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Trustee Ahrens?
Here.
Kammerer?
Here.
Carbonaro?
Here.
Daney?
Here.
Hopkins?
Here.
Ranky?
Here.
President Wallace.
Here. This one item we have on our agenda this evening for the Committee of the Whole meeting is a Finance and Golf Committee. Chairman Daney.
Thank you, Mr. President. The only item we have on the agenda this evening is the Brewster Creek Business Park TIF District refinancing. And with that, I'm going to let staff take the lead on this.
Thank you, Trustee Daney. If you refer to your staff memo, it was kind of a collective work on putting this memo together. You have some history of the business park and then going into what the additional TIF budget and bonds and the revenue notes mean. So there may be other people that will answer these questions, but I'm going to give it a try in terms of getting the ball rolling. We also have with us Peter Raphael of William Blair, who is going to explain, and he's got a little handout that will explain the bond reissuance, as well as Ken Lehner from Elmhurst Stone and Jeff Brown from Elmhurst Stone. The business park started in 1999 when we adopted the TIF district with the three ordinances that normally go on with approving a TIF. You adopt the quarry redevelopment plan and project, you establish the project area, and you adopt the tax increment financing for that project area. We established those in 99, 670-acre business park. The initial project cost estimates in those TIF redevelopment plans was $30 million to include primarily environmental engineering, planning, implementation, administrative fees. There was wetland mitigation. The bulk of it was site preparation, which is the earthwork that goes into taking that quarry and making it an industrial park, as well as the roads and the public improvements, stormwater detention, et cetera. Tax revenue bonds and developer notes were issued for the project to pay back the interest and principal over the past 16 years, when the original TIF is a 23-year time frame, which ends on June 1st, 2022. As you see by the evidence of all the buildings we have, 36 buildings, 76 businesses, and we've got a couple more in the pipeline. We had just approved another one tonight for Greco. There are about, with all that, there are about 145 acres of land left to develop, both in Cook and in DuPage County. The bulk of the Cook County portion remains undeveloped. The Elmhurst Stone is requesting basically three things at this time. They're asking to increase the TIF budget as allowed by the statute, issue additional bonds at a lower rate than they currently have, and issuing new developer tax increment revenue notes with a new interest rate. All these things, you've seen the attachments, which are in a draft form. Things will be finalized. We have a TIF consultant that will do a new project cost estimate. And I'm going to let Brian now explain the method of increasing the budget, issuing the bonds, and then the new revenue notes. And then after that, we will have Mr. Raphael do the PowerPoint presentation. And Brian, why don't you go ahead and do that part?
I think it's spelled out pretty well in the memo, and I think you spelled it out. There is the ability to amend the TIF budget within certain parameters without having public hearings. There's a built-in inflation factor in there, plus 5%, and what they're proposing is within that guideline. And so they first need to amend the TIF budget that was in the original plan that was done many years ago, and they've spent some of that money. I think the bottom line is if we don't approve of what they're asking us to approve, then what you see is what that development will look like. It won't go further. This is to enable them to, without extending the TIF, to make further improvements. So there are little pieces in DuPage, which obviously, because of the tax rate, most of DuPage has gotten built up, and there's not much that's happened in Cook. A large portion is the detention, or the big retention pond that ultimately will go to the Park District, and there'll be walking paths. But that second 72 acres behind the fire station there, there's the ability to perhaps at least get it graded, reclaimed to a point so that it potentially could be developed in the future. Peter Raphael from William Blair has a PowerPoint where he walked through some of the technical things, but as Jim said, there'd be issuing some additional bonds, a new developer tax increment revenue note, and with that savings, it'll allow them to put the increment back in. They'll be funding the money by taking out loans from their bank, but that savings generated by the difference in interest rates between the two instruments will allow money to be put back into TIF-eligible expenses where they can continue to make some improvements. So what we would look for is direction to give notice to the taxing districts. It's not, there's no extension of time to this TIF, so they shouldn't have objection. And if that money is poured back in, then the increment will actually be bigger. The assessed value will be higher, and the tax revenues that the taxing bodies ultimately receive will be higher. So I think it's a win-win.
I'd like to have Peter come up and go through the PowerPoint.
Good evening, President and Board of Trustees. I'm Peter Raphael with William Blair, and I've been working with the village and with Elmer Chicago Stone on this transaction since probably 1999, so I have a little history. Given where interest rates are today, we think it's a great opportunity to reduce the interest rate on some of your obligations, and as Brian said, allow us to generate a few more dollars to keep this development moving forward. First, we want to answer two questions, or make sure that everyone is aware of these two issues. Number one, we are not extending the TIF. I understand that there might have been some other TIFs in town that was an issue on, so we are not doing that. This TIF expires in 22. We will keep the expiration date of 22. The second item is when we do these types of financings, these are non-recourse to the village. So it does not count against your general obligation bonding capability. To the extent that we ever had issues with the rating agencies, we're always there to help to explain to them what this is. But it's essentially a revenue bond secured solely by the incremental taxes to be generated out of this district. That's the way it's always been, and that's the way we're going to continue with this proposed expansion or financing. It's hard to see here, but this is the entire TIF district. The yellow slotted areas are those that are developed. Red areas are the undeveloped areas. So again, what we're trying to do is take those red areas, help them further, and allow for the increment and the development to grow through 2022. So getting into the specifics, the existing developer note that's out there is at 9%. That was done when interest rates were very high. We need to reduce that. Savings then can be used to plow back into the project. The current balance on that note is just slightly under $6 million. And we've thrown a rate up there. We don't know what the rate will be. I'm shooting high there. I'd rather under promise here so that we'll know. We're trying to get this transaction done in August. take advantage of the rates before anything happens with England or the Fed. So in just general terms, you can see what looks like red there is the reduced debt service that would be payable on the existing developer note. So in total, up in the corner there, we're saving over $500,000, $6,000 just on this $6 million refinancing. Really, that's just the start of it. We have some other goals. So besides reducing debt service on that note, we want to provide a few extra dollars up front. We can do that through the issuance of additional bonds. The current indenture allows us to issue additional debt, provided we have 150 coverage. 150 coverage is pretty generous. Most TIFs don't have that kind of coverage. You're very lucky. So we will refinance the developer note that's out there at 9%, issue some additional dollars, allow that to be put back into the project, and then, as was mentioned, we'll issue an additional developer note. Now, the developer note is subordinate to the bonds. So first the bonds get paid, and then once the bonds are paid, we can pay off the developer note. The developer note would be issued to Elmer Chicago Stone. They have to go to their bank, borrow the money, and put it into the project with the hopes that the project's successful enough that there will be enough increment to pay it back. So the risk is all on the developer in this case, which is what you'd want. So a little graph. What we're looking at here is what we propose. The blue in this case, I guess I'm colorblind today. Does that look blue? The blue is the existing debt. The red is the debt that we will add on. And the green line is where we believe the increment will be. So you can see there's a large cushion between where that green line is and where the debt is. That's the 150 coverage. So we want to make sure that there's plenty of increment and there's going to be no issues in retiring this bond. Now, it's the difference between the line and that red area, which is the gray area. It's an appropriate color. The gray area is what we hope will be generated and will be used to retire the developer note. So it's that area that we will use. Again, to do that, we need to increase the budget, which is all allowed for in the statute, and it simply requires a notice to the taxing bodies. If we can proceed along those lines, we would come back in August, your second meeting, or I guess it's the only meeting in August, and get the bond documents approved. Bond documents, Jim, I don't know if they were included in the package. So we have drafts. We're very far along. We would be in a position to have all the documents finalized before the next meeting. If it's approved, we would then go to the market right after that meeting and try to lock in these rates. And that is, in a nutshell, what we're trying to do here. I don't know if there are any questions.
I have one question. Well, I have a question at this point. When I received the legend, we talked about the vacant parcels and the built parcels. You know, that's very simple to understand. But I had some trouble distinguishing. It said 145.38 acres in Cook County and 94.21 acres in DuPage. Can you show us? I can't find the Cook County acreage on the legend.
So there's the pointer. Let's see if I can make the pointer work.
There's two parcels basically that are undeveloped in Cook, 172.45 and 172.93 acres.
So it's the two parcels at the top.
It's the ones on the top right by the fire station.
Maybe I should have got the zoning map out then, because I thought Bartlett Road to the north there, I thought those were in DuPage.
No, the Cook County line is basically where the ComEd right-of-way
Okay,
is.
that explains
So you
it.
see that? Yeah.
All right, clear.
Yeah, we didn't put the county line on it, sorry.
Okay, I'd like to put a very fine point on this particular issue. What is the refinancing going to cost the residents of Bartlett?
Nothing.
Good answer. Good answer.
All costs are paid
Continue the
through the
answer.
TIF.
And all the risk is on the developer.
Correct.
There's no
Saves them
recourse
a
against
lot
the
of money.
village.
Right. So we've,
So the village is not on the hook to pay should something happen, and hopefully that won't.
No.
Everything will go well, but
that's all paid by Elmer Chicago Stone, and the draft of those ordinances, at their dime, we hired Mike Laube, a TIF consultant, to look at the 1.5% coverage. They've begun the process, but all that is an expense the developer pays, as they paid for the previous costs and things. So that's the answer.
thank you.
Is this something you plan to continue if you go to the banks and they won't give you 6%?
Well, that would be on the, for Elmer Chicago Stone to answer. They have to go to their bank and they have to negotiate that. The village will not be a part of that lending and that negotiation. You will simply issue the note to them. They have to turn around and go to their bank and say, bank, will you give me any money against this note that I have?
Okay.
So are we saying that 145 acres in Cook County and 94 acres in DuPage County will be developed? Are we saying that?
No.
That's the goal.
I mean, you take out that whole 70-some acres with the detention pond, but they are trying to develop what's left in DuPage, and the piece that's a little further west, if you're looking up there, the piece behind the fire station. But that other 70-plus acres, where there may be a portion of that that they can develop, actually, but at least up in the northeast corner where you have that big detention, that won't develop. That'll be donated to the Bartlett Park District, and they're negotiated that, and they will be putting in some paths and things around that. That they had to spend a lot of money to plant dead trees for the wetland. It was a sore subject for them.
Until the detention pond is turned over to the Park District, there is upwards of $50,000 to $100,000 in annual maintenance and planting. So it's still a big expense in the TIF district. And until it's turned over, it will remain the expense of the developer.
Anyone else? Then,
In 2022, are they going to come back to us and say, we need to extend this TIF? That's my biggest question right now.
Well, you could say no if they did, but they won't, because they already could have tried to ask for that, and we dissuaded them from asking to extend it. We talked about doing what was allowed within the statute and amending the budget. So they already were told no. You would have the option to say no, and probably sounds this board were much the same, probably would be no. So that's the thing that the taxing bodies sometimes have objection to, an extension, because they're not getting their money when they thought they would. But this will increase the increment, increase the assessed value, and you would have the total discretion to say no if they even asked, if they dared ask.
I do have one other question. It's slightly off skew here. Can TIF money be used to make improvements on roadways that already exist? Because we already had this discussion about Spitzer Road. It's disgusting. I mean, it's a big problem going down that road. Trash and garbage all over the place. I don't know if that's been cleaned up yet, but you know, as chairing the bicycle committee, I took a tour through that area to have a look just at routes around that bicyclists might go on, and it's in pretty bad shape. So, I mean, if TIF money can be used to clean that up,
It can be.
I'd love to see it happen.
We've had them and there's two property owners that are involved in Spitzer, Elmhurst Stone, and then the property owner to the west. They've both mutually agreed to chain off the road, so it's essentially closed. And Elmhurst Stone and that property owner are going through and doing cleanup. Now, I don't know how much has been done yet, but it could be used for that.
There
But
was a lot of fly dumping.
A lot of fly
Partly
dumping.
because the
That's why we
fire
closed.
district wanted that open. And so now that it's closed off, they could at least catch up and clean up what's there.
Good.
And the answer to your question is yes, you could use, that would be a TIF eligible expense.
All right, good. I mean, if it's a private road, I guess it really doesn't concern us, but nonetheless, it's just, you hate to think it's like a trash dump. You know.
It will become public eventually.
Yeah, right, there you go.
Is there any reason why this can't hit the next board meeting?
Yes.
I'll leave that up to Peter, but we've set out a schedule. We have to notice the taxing districts. There's a time frame that they are required to do a notice, and that's kind of why we were past the next meeting, and then you are at the August 16th meeting to get the final versions approved.
Like Peter said, I mean, the rate environment now is
Right.
is perfect for what he's trying to accomplish, and
Right.
wait another month,
Right.
and
Right.
Well, unfortunately, that's the time frame we read. I don't think we could do it by now.
Okay.
The process.
The documents need to work, and it would be a little presumptuous to pass the ordinance before you notified the taxing bodies.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I guess the only thing you're looking for here is direction to send notices out to the taxing district.
Correct.
That's it? Any objection, anyone? Then I guess.
just don't put the word extension on any part of the notice.
No.
Right.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you for being here.
Mr. President, that's all we
All
have.
right, thank you, Chairman Daney. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Trustee Cameron, seconded by Trustee Carbonaro. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Aaron's? Camera?
Yes?
Carbonaro?
Yes.
Daney?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Ranky?
Yes.
We are adjourned.